Welcome to the north of Iceland. From Europe's most powerful waterfall to the jaw-dropping basalt column canyons, this trip is packed with unreal spots you will not want to miss. We'll show you insane hot springs that are perched on the top of cliffs, all the way to the hidden gems that most people easily miss. And we'll even take you to the whale watching capital of Iceland. The north of Iceland might not be the most popular part of Iceland, but we're gonna show you why it should be on your road trip because of the epic views, hidden hot springs, and otherworldly locations that will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, we're Giselle and Steven, also known as the Lover's Passport, and we're gonna be posting a new bucket list destination every single week of 2025. We visited Iceland over 5 times together, and we cannot wait to help you plan the most epic trip. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe if you love to travel, and give us a like so that way more of our videos pop up for you on YouTube.
Welcome to our home for the week.
So in order to do this road trip, we rented a van from Happy Campers and started in Reykjavik and drove all the way up to the north and to the east. If you want to do this exact road trip, we cannot recommend Happy Campers enough. Every single time we go to Iceland, we make sure that we rent from them. So I went ahead and put the QR code right here with the link to the exact camper van that we rented, or you can always go and check the description down below. Now, before we dive in, I will say that I'm probably going to mispronounce most of these destinations. So if we miss anything, we're gonna go ahead and put the correct spelling right here so that way you can plug it in correctly on Google Maps. The first location you're gonna hit on the way up to the north is called Hvítserkur Rock Formation. It's an insane 15-meter tall rock formation that rises straight out of the ocean in Iceland's northern coast. It kind of looks like an elephant, or some people think it looks like a dragon. It's famous for photographers showing up to get this dramatic silhouette up against the skyline. It's also an incredible place to watch the northern lights. Now, if you aren't a photographer and you aren't a big fan of rock pieces, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but if you are a photographer and you love different rock formations, I would definitely add this one to your northern Iceland bucket list.
There are hundreds of free natural hot springs around Iceland, and one of our favorites in the north is Fosslaug Hot Springs. We actually visited this for the first time back in 2021 when we did our ring road trip, and it was one of our favorites because it's a more local feel. You don't have to pay for it, it's super tranquil, and it's really just like out in nature. Whereas a lot of the other lagoons around Iceland that are super popular are really commercialized. So if you're looking for a more authentic, local kind of hot spring, this is definitely one worth checking out in the north of Iceland.
Next up on this list is Akureyri, which is basically known as Iceland's northern capital. This is the biggest city in the north of Iceland, so if you need to load up on food or to stop and get some gas, this is where we recommend doing it. This was our first main stop when we were driving from Reykjavik all the way up to the north. There is beautiful mountains that you pass through on the drive up there. So this is where we stopped for lunch before we went and saw sunset and stopped for the night in one of the great camper spots. If you guys were looking to stay in a hotel during your stay, this is where we would recommend having a base, so that way you can road trip or day trip from here to all the other locations that we're going to talk about in this video.
Next, you have to visit the stunning waterfall called Godafoss, otherwise known as the Waterfall of the Gods. It's a really unique waterfall out of all the ones in Iceland because it's almost got this like crescent shape look. You can go down a set of stairs and get a nice up close look, as well as there's a viewing platform from the top. And it's a really beautiful waterfall. It's not as tall as all the other ones up there, but it's definitely wide and very beautiful. The nice thing about it too is that it's got a massive parking lot. There's lots of availability right there, and there's some restaurants nearby if you want to stop for a quick bite to eat.
Before we dive into one of our favorite hot springs in all of Iceland, I want to remind you about our bi-weekly newsletter. If you guys love credit card tips, if you guys want the best recommendations so you don't miss any of our blogs or upcoming posts, or just if you love travel tips, make sure to scan the QR code right here so that way you can stay up to date and follow us on Passport Pals. So if you aren't already on there, make sure you go and check that out. So the most famous hot spring in the north is called Myvatn. Myvatn is this stunning geothermal area. It basically is a lake that's surrounded by these otherworldly landscapes. It's a super unique area, and like we said, it is our favorite area to go to for the hot springs. We personally went and hung out in the hot springs, and we included our full review in our hot springs video. If you want to see our full video on the top hot springs to check out in Iceland, we went ahead and linked it right up here, so that way you guys can watch it right after this video. One of our favorite hidden gem hot springs in all of Iceland is actually in that. Myvatn basically reminds us of the Blue Lagoon up north. It doesn't have as many amenities, it's not as big, it's not as crowded, but they are making renovations there. So if you guys are in the north of Iceland, we would definitely recommend making a stop there.
While you're exploring the geothermal area near Myvatn, you might as well check out Hvevir. This area is a geothermal area that reminds me a lot of Yellowstone National Park in the US. Here you'll see bubbling mud pools, steaming fumaroles, and really vibrant mineral-rich areas, which creates a really otherworldly landscape. I will say this whole area really smells like sulfur, so that rotten egg smell will be everywhere around all of Myvatn, this particular area, and even some of the other hot springs. And that's totally normal, but just so you can mentally prepare yourself.
Next up, right next to Myvatn is Krafla. Krafla is this gigantic crater. When we went, it was actually covered in snow, so it was pretty incredible, but this is what it looks like during the summer. It has this vivid blue water. When we went, like I said, it was snowing, so it looked a little bit different than what you would typically see, but we would definitely recommend stopping, parking here, and taking a hike around the entire caldera. It is a super stunning spot, and I cannot tell you enough. This area looks otherworldly. It's one of the most unique areas in the north, because in our South Iceland video, if you watched that one that we posted last week, you're gonna recognize that this does not look anything like it. In the south of Iceland, it has all these epic waterfalls and all these beautiful canyons, but you don't see as many of these epic volcano structures like you do up north.
Now, this next spot might arguably be my favorite spot in all of north of Iceland, and it's Detifoss Waterfall. Detifoss is the most powerful waterfall in all of Europe, and when you arrive, you immediately know why. This thing is pounding, and it's a little bit of a walk to get there. It's not super far, but it's definitely worth a visit. This is one of the most insane waterfalls I've ever seen anywhere. Like, it's in my top 10 waterfalls, I would say. It's also connected nearby on the same hiking trail. You can go visit Selfoss. A little less big, a little less as intense and crazy, but it's still worth a check if you are visiting this area. Detifoss itself is 44 meters, which translate over to 144 feet. So that's just saying how massive this waterfall really is. You feel really tiny when you're standing next to it. Granted, if you're plugging in Detifoss into your Google Maps, there will be two different parking locations. There's the west side and the east side. The west side is the most popular side. That's the side we recommend checking out if you want a really pretty straight on view of the falls. If you go to the east side, you're gonna do a little more off-roading. You probably wanna have a 4x4 if you're gonna go on that side. If you go to the east side, there's a very interesting other perspective. It's almost a side view of the falls, but we personally like the west side better, and it's way more easily accessible.
West side is the best.
Now we have officially arrived in the whale watching capital of Iceland, which is called Husavik. This is also where one of our favorite hot springs in the entire north of Iceland is. So we're gonna put both of these in one. When you're in Husavik, we recommend driving up to Geosea thermal baths. It's basically this hot spring on the top of a cliff. So we are able to go all the way up, relax in the beautiful hot spring, grab a drink, look at the snow-covered mountains, and we could watch whales breach and hang out up there. During whale season, this is where you're gonna want to go. We could see ship after ship go out for whale watching, especially in the mornings. So if you guys have never gone whale watching before, or if maybe you love doing it, this is definitely a bucket list worthy thing that you need to do in the Northern Iceland. So I went ahead and put our favorite whale watching tour right here. You guys can scan it. We would recommend doing the earlier tours because those ones tend to be where you see the most whale activity. Like we said, we cannot recommend it enough when you're in Husavik. And if you want to see our full Geosea thermal bath review, go ahead and, like I said, go watch the hot spring video. But this one, I'm gonna give a spoiler, it's one of our favorites. It had the best view. It was a little bit smaller, but it felt more intimate and more like a hidden gem.
Another insane spot that we personally still haven't made it out to, but we've tried several times and have gotten stuck in snowstorms, so we unfortunately have not been able to, is the Arctic Henge. It's like Iceland's version of Stonehenge in the UK. That's kind of what I equate it to, and it's one of the best spots to shoot Northern Lights photos. We've seen some pretty crazy ones on Instagram from this area, so if you have the opportunity and you're exploring around North Iceland during the aurora season, which is September to April, then this could be a really cool spot to go and shoot some photos. Granted, the closest campsite is a little far away in terms of that area, so you will have to drive up, shoot aurora, and then camp further down south, but it is very cool. And if you want a full map of all the campsites around Iceland, because you have to stay in a campsite if you're doing a camper van or a tent, you can't just go anywhere you want, I'll link all of the master campsites down below in the description for you.
Now, before we jump into our favorite canyon in all of Iceland, I want to answer some of your questions. We have had so many people ask us how to become a content creator, how we're able to travel so much, how we're able to live this life, and it's because we work as travel content creators. If you're ever interested in becoming a travel content creator or learning anything about how to take professional photos, grow on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, or just learn how to start to monetize on all these platforms, go ahead and scan the QR code right here and you can get free tips in your inbox every other week. Now with that, let's jump into Stuðlagil. Stuðlagil is one of Iceland's most stunning and natural wonders. It features towering basalt columns and a vibrant blue glacial river running through the heart. Now I will say, the vibrant blue water is not last year round. The vibrant blue water is only here from the summer months, so from around May and June until around September and October. During the winter, it turns into more of a grayish dark color or even brown depending on how much it rains. So I do want to make sure I pre-warn you. We had a few friends that drove there and unfortunately they saw the color and it wasn't as blue as it was. It's still absolutely stunning. You hike down into this beautiful canyon. There's walls that are absolutely massive around you. During every single trip to Iceland, this has still become one of our favorite and most unique canyons we've ever seen in the country. It's basically a photographer's dream house and it reminds us so much of Game of Thrones. So if you're a big movie fan or if you're a photographer, you cannot miss this spot.
And that is it for our guide on Northern Iceland. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out our full Iceland playlist where we go over a ton more information. We have an ultimate guide to Iceland. If you decide to drive the full ring road, we have further breakdowns of the south of Iceland, all of the best guided tours and activities around Iceland, and so much more. So we'll link that up here for you as well as in the description box because we've got a lot of good info since we've been to Iceland quite a few times. And with that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you guys being a part of the TLP family here on YouTube. And with that, we will see you next week with another adventure.